Mr. Bell, civil partnerships to become law in the Isle of Man. This is a big step, isn't it?
It is a very important step for the Isle of Man, and is the end, really, of a very long journey spanning some 20 years, moving the Isle of Man from a position where homosexuality was, in fact, a criminal offence to today, where very shortly we'll be able to celebrate civil partnership. So it is a landmark day for the Isle of Man, and I hope once and for all it'll put to rest the adverse perceptions that many people have had and continue to have over a number of years about the position which now has been overtaken by events.
Well, let's do a bit of a history on this. I mean, it's 19 years ago since it was actually legalised. Before that, I mean, the Isle of Man was a different place, wasn't it?
Yes, up to 1992, when we decriminalised homosexuality, the law, although it hadn't actually been brought into practice, but the law was on the statute, that in fact those caught participating in homosexual acts could face life imprisonment. It was a very harsh, repressive regime for young people on the Isle of Man in particular at that time. And I well remember a number of suicides of young people who could no longer tolerate the stresses which had been put on them. And in fact, personally, I had to sit with two people for many, many hours to talk them out of suicide. So it really was a very dark period for the Isle of Man. We had a very difficult and really quite unpleasant debate leading up to the decriminalisation and the Sexual Offences Act itself coming in. But I'm pleased to say since then the island has moved forward quite rapidly and has largely followed the UK in the various other changes that we brought in, as I say, culminating now in civil partnership very shortly.
Because it was the Court of Human Rights, wasn't it, that really pushed the Isle of Man in the first place to make these changes?
Well, it was pressure from the United Kingdom government and, of course, the involvement of the European Court of Human Rights as well, which I think ultimately pushed the politicians of the day, who were somewhat reluctant, I have to say, but they recognised that they had to bring the Isle of Man in line with the rest of Europe, with the civilised part of Europe, and give true human rights to our minorities.
Well, you're getting this law passed now, but I mean, this is still a bit behind the UK, hasn't it?
In timing it is, yes. It's taken a bit longer to come in, but at least we're there. I think we should look on the positives now. I know many people on the Isle of Man have been looking forward to this day when they can actually establish their relationship formally in the eyes of the law. That gives participants in those relationships many legal powers which they don't have at the moment over a range of issues, from estates to pensions to family visits, etc. All these sort of things which have been enjoyed and taken for granted by heterosexual couples for a long, long time. There is now true equality in that situation, and I think many people on the Isle of Man will be celebrating both the arrival of the civil partnerships and the final burying, I think, of the dark reputation that the islands had in a not too distant past.
And yet there are a few MHKs and a few council ministers who were uneasy with the legislation, should we say?
This legislation. There were some questions raised, but I think by and large the majority of the House of Keys and indeed the Legislative Council afterwards recognised that this is the right step to take. It's because we want to take it. It's because we believe all our people should be treated equally. And this is now the outcome. And as I said, the act is due to come into play on the 6th of April. And I'm sure there will be many people wanting to take advantage of that as soon as possible.
Now it comes in the new tax year as such, doesn't it? So that'll be when people can qualify to get their whatever grants and subsidies and whatever that they can normally get as a heterosexual couple.
Yes, it has been coincidentally in some respects, but it has been designed around the start of the tax year, because that then gives those in a civil partnership the same tax allowances as heterosexual couples. So it puts both on the same footing within the same tax year. So it is an appropriate time for it to start, and it is just a happy coincidence that the bill now is going to get royal assent immediately prior to that date.
So is the Isle of Man now, would you say, a happier, a more tolerant place than it was 20 years ago?
Very much so. People today, I don't think, can properly understand the amount of bigotry and unpleasantness which existed around this subject 25 years ago. The Isle of Man is a very different place now. It is a lot more tolerant, inclusive, understanding, and indeed I think the issue itself gives very few people any real causes for concern. I think the Isle of Man can be truly proud of the progress it's made and the decision it's taken now to give equal rights to all our citizens. We can hold our head up high in the international community and show quite clearly the Isle of Man now is on equal footing with the United Kingdom and indeed with most other countries.